the truth lies bare. We stand together, united in care. With each tear that falls, each heart that breaks, we rise as one for the innocent sake. No more silence, we'll break the chains against the darkness. We'll stand through the pain. We are the voices for the voiceless, for the children lost in the night. We call for change, we demand justice. Shine a light, bring truth to the fight. Together we'll stand, together we'll shout. No more abuse, we'll turn it about. With kinship and love, we'll make things right. Voices for the voiceless, we'll ignite the light. Behind those walls, a silent plea. Children's laughter replaced by a memory. Wrongly torn apart from their kin. Stand for the ones who need strength within. When the system fails, when trust is betrayed, we'll rise up now. We won't be dismayed. We'll seek accountability. We'll fight for the truth and shield the innocence, the heart of our youth. We are the voices for the voiceless, for the children lost in the night. We call for change, we demand justice. Shine a light, bring truth to the fight. Together we'll stand, together we'll shout. No more abuse, we'll turn it about. With kinship and love, we'll make things right. Voices for the voiceless, we'll ignite the light. President Trump, hear our cry. Musk, we need your hand to fly. Families reunited, let's heal this land. Together we'll rise, together we'll stand. We are the voices for the voiceless, for the children lost in the night. We call for change, we demand justice. Shine a light, bring truth to the fight. Together we'll stand, together we'll shout. No more abuse, we'll turn it about. With kinship and love, we'll make things right. Voices for the voiceless, we'll ignite the light. So hear us now, we're taking a stand for every child in this promised land. No more whispers, we'll raise our voice. Together united, we'll make the choice. Voices for the voiceless, hear us today. We're changing the world, we're paving the way.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are back. This is our third day of the DC rally. We're glad you could be here. Just for everyone sitting here, I may talk like I'm speaking to more than are here, and that's because we have over 20,000 people connected watching this live stream. Thank you for being there live stream. Please send us messages. And this is Terry LaPointe. I'm Sherry Brown, and we're going to open in prayer.
Welcome, everybody. I'm going to read to you from Isaiah 42, 22, and 23. But this is a people plundered and looted, all of them trapped in pits or hidden away in prison. They have become plunder with no one to rescue them. They have been made loot with no one to say, send them back or restore. Which of you will listen to this or pay close attention in time to come? We are those who are paying attention. We are those who are listening. Holy Spirit, we welcome you into this place. We welcome you, Jesus. We know that the things that are happening to children and families all over this country and even all over the world, that there are some horrible things that the enemy is doing. But Lord, we know that you are bigger, and you said, Jesus, that you came to set the captives free. And we are begging you, we implore you to set the captives free. Lord, I thank you for each person that is here, each person that is listening online, each person that is represented, because there are hundreds of thousands of stories represented here today. And we ask that you would comfort and that you would minister to the trauma of each one. And Lord, we ask for you to set the captives free, for you to open the eyes of the blind that are in this city, in Washington, D.C., and in the legislature and the judicial houses around the country. Lord, we're asking you to open the eyes of the people. Let them see, let them hear the voices. God, we thank you and we ask for your presence and for your protection. We ask for your angels to be released to protect each one represented here today in Jesus' name. And we give you all the honor and all the glory and all the praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Many of you know that I was an investigative journalist with medicalkidnap.com for several years, and I covered hundreds and hundreds of stories. Each one precious to me. Each family that I met, each family whose story I covered and investigated, each one is important and each one is precious. But every now and then there comes a story that rocks your world. The story that you're about to hear next is the story that has rocked my world more than any other. I got a call from Connie Reguly, the founder of Family Forward Project, one afternoon, and she said, "Terry, you got to talk to this mom. You got to take this call from this mom whose child has been medically kidnapped, but she herself was adopted to child traffickers. You've got to take this call." And I took this call. And the things that I've heard, I thought I had heard some horrible, horrific stories. But I'd never heard anything like the things that she was telling me. I thought I knew a lot about what was going on with child trafficking and with child protective services. I thought I knew a lot, but I realized I didn't know but just a drop in the bucket of what's really going on all across America. There were things we never wrote about because some things you can't prove. You can't prove some things that happen to you when you're a child. It's really hard, but over the years, more and more has come out in the media and things. She'll be talking about things that you have heard in the media, that you've heard in alternative media. She'll be talking about those things, and you'll hear those things, and you'll realize, oh my gosh. People that know me know that Jennifer Guskin is the person whose story rocked my world, because I will say the first person that I heard about this from was Jennifer Guskin, and now we see it here. The first person that told me about this was Jennifer Guskin, and now we see this. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce this precious mom and my friend, Jennifer Guskin. Give her a big round of applause.
Thank you for being here. We're all here for the same reason, to protect children, humanity's future. But protect them from what? Who? Sadly, in many cases, we have to protect our children from those who are supposed to protect us, but instead use their positions of power and authority with the intent to exploit for personal gain. This path often leads straight through government employment. This is the preferred route used by human and child traffickers to obtain children with the intent to sell for personal profit, and with complete disregard for that child's safety. Often this is done through the CPS, foster, and adoption system. In the last few years, the child welfare system lost between 500,000 and 900,000 children. But where do those children go? What happens to them? I'm here to tell you what I witnessed as a child and how it ties into current events. My name is Jennifer Guskin. I'm with the CARES Project, which is affiliated with Lindell TV. I was adopted as an infant by a couple with the intent to sell me. I've been to Epstein Island and multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. I was experimented on and endured what many consider to be ritualistic abuse. When I started rejecting these tortures by acting out and seeking help, my mental health was belittled, so I was medicated into oblivion and locked away until they felt I'd be silent. During the 2016 election, the DNC leaks revealed how the Clinton campaign was working with the DNC and the media to cheat Bernie Sanders, and in doing so, a number of emails revealed suspicious language alluding to inappropriate behavior with children, which made me realize that what I had previously thought were daydreams were actually flashbacks of abuse I had endured as a child. I started to put together that what happened to me was not only real, it was not an isolated incident, and I had to decide what to do. Will I speak and risk everything, or stay silent and allow child trafficking within the upper echelons of society to continue without dispute? In the beginning of October of 2017, I started writing a post intending to go public. Shortly after, the Me Too movement broke, which encouraged me to keep going. The night before posting, I told myself, it's never going to be perfect. If I don't do it now, I'll never post it. I'll check it and post it in the morning. The next morning, October 23rd, 2017, I made a post on Facebook. It was the following. This is a bit, extremely difficult to do, so please bear with me. Pedogate is real. I was born into it. My mother was one of their victims. She was impregnated by one of them, and that's how I came to be. After my birth, I was adopted by a family under the condition that they would still have access to me. My adoptive grandfather was high-ranked in the military who did accounting for them and would often babysit me while he had meetings with everything from military personnel, politicians, businessmen, and diplomats. It's amazing the things people say in front of a child they don't think is paying attention. It's also interesting how much to let that child read when they think that child doesn't understand. This was part of how I was identified for a deeper level of experimentation later on in my childhood. A few nights a week I'd be carried from my bed to a family friend's house and used. Often it was sexual, sometimes for other reasons. On Fridays, until Hebrew school on Sunday morning, the majority of the weekend, a complete blur. I ended up as part of the more deep state programs because I displayed metaphysical tendencies, in part exposed by the, quote, parties I was taken to. Yes, they did drug us. They also used trauma and mind manipulation to make it difficult to remember. Because of this, admittedly, my memory isn't whole. Every day I'm getting a new flashback and remembering more, which is part of why it's taken me so long to come forward. But why now? With Harvey Weinstein and that debacle coming out, it's a small step to exposing Pedogate and all of its fucked up glory. People are listening to those who were abused and not just outright dismissing them. It's time we all come forward, and I can only encourage others to do the same if I practice what I preach. Pedogate's foundation is built on two pillars, blackmail or bribery. I've seen grown men take bets as they laugh and literally raped a child apart. I've seen grown men cry as they were given something to keep them erect so they could rape a child while being filmed on camera under threat of death for himself and his family. We must be careful in how we approach each individual case. Far too many sincerely good people have been thrown into hell who deserve understanding and compassion. Don't expect the horrible ones to get what they deserve. They won't. There is zero way to truly hold these, quote, people, end quote, accountable for the suffering they caused. Personally, I'll settle for them losing everything they ever had and loved. Their greatest fear is to have nothing. No power, no money, and no authority. We can, however, come together to make sure they are never able to harm another man, woman, or child again. To all of you who have been painstakingly working to expose this, the gratitude myself and others likely feel will never be able to be expressed. I want to answer questions and will to the best of my ability, but as I mentioned before, there was a lot done to mess with my memory, so there's much to uncover. Thank you for reading this. All I ask of you is to be positive and encourage others to come out and share their experiences. If enough of us come forward to expose this, we can finally remove the corruption that has been plaguing this country and planet for far too long. Overall, my post was well received and met with a lot of support. Until December 29th, 2017, I gave birth to my daughter, Iris. Despite the fact that all drug tests came back negative, Baltimore County CPS opened a substance-exposed newborn case and told me that if I didn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I refused to be silenced, and CPS demanded my almost perfectly healthy daughter to be medically held hostage and abused for weeks prior to taking her, quote, in case of neglect, end quote. The CPS doctor, Mangala Michelle Trudeau, proceeded to lie to the court, claiming that my daughter was extremely malnourished in my care while making a, quote, miraculous improvement after removal. Blood work paints a very different picture, showing almost perfect health upon admission and an extreme decline in health hours after removal. The cause of decline is not present in the medical records, as Greater Baltimore Medical Center claims that they were instructed not to document everything done to Iris, in violation of state and federal law. My daughter was then placed with a foster mother, Iris's paternal grandmother, who quickly became, quote, best friends with my father, who raped and sold me throughout my childhood. It was soon after Iris started showing signs of abuse, similar to what I endured as a child. The foster mother was fond of bragging about how much money she was making from it. It was at this point I started to publicly ask, if I was adopted as an infant for the purpose of being sold to Epstein's ilk, how many other children who have been through the CPS, foster, and adoption industries have met the same fate? This enraged CPS, and they began extorting my husband. Either shut her up or you'll never see your daughter again. They convinced him to file a police report against me. The police came, and they essentially bombed out every window of my house to arrest me. They refused to give me a trial date. I was deemed incompetent to stand trial due to the fact that I wanted to testify on my own behalf, and was moved to a psychiatric facility indefinitely without a trial date in sight. The state of Maryland and Baltimore County was holding me political prisoner for having the audacity to speak about government-sponsored child trafficking. They have refused to bring charges against the people doing the trafficking, though. While I was being held captive, I met a number of other young women who were dealing with something similar, some of whom had their children removed, with their only crime being foster children themselves. Others were due to the stress of questionable CPS allegations, which caused them to snap and lash out in ways they normally wouldn't. Another woman had migrated here to the U.S. and had her children taken under false allegations as well. It seems like CPS targeting the most vulnerable among us is a common occurrence for them. Less than a year after my husband filed the police report, Iris was returned to him legally. However, due to the fact Iris's primary caretaker, me, was unable to care for her, she had to remain with her paternal grandmother, where the abuse continued. The facility I was in attempted to cut me off from the outside world multiple times, going so far as to say that I couldn't contact my husband after allowing me to speak with him for months prior, dialing my phone calls, and one of the nurses routinely took away my phone time because someone else made allegations they were too lazy to check into. I was assaulted in the unit, and when I tried to bring charges, I was told that if I brought charges, I was threatened with movement from the only women's-only unit with only about 24 women to the co-ed unit with 40 men and women. When I refused to take their medications, they insisted that patients ask, when I refused to take medications and insisted that patients ask about side effects, the doctor flipped out on me and made false statements in the report to make it harder for me to get out in review. When I asked them to put my documentation, drug test results, blood work, letters of recommendations, emails, etc., in my records so the competency evaluator could review them, they did not. This was part of their effort to disappear me. Luckily, that did not happen, and after almost a year and a half, I was released to a halfway house where I had to spend another year. I am home now with my daughter. However, I still don't have an answer to my question. If this was done to me, how many other children and families has this been done to? How many of us end up in the hands of Epstein's ilk? This is why we went to Senator Rand Paul's office to drop off documents and to give my testimony. If you want to see, please check out the Karis Project on X. My voice is just one of many. We need our voices to unify. We must become a resounding roar. We must demand transparency and accountability. We must never allow this aspect of history to repeat. We must come together and fight for the children. Thank you very much for your time and patience. If you would like to speak with me or have any questions, please reach out. Thank you.
Wow. And she didn't even scratch the surface of the things that she's been through. Unimaginable horrors. But I'm so proud of her because she is an overcomer. She has overcome, and she is speaking out. She is telling her story, and she's becoming an advocate, and she is telling people her story so that other people can be helped, so that we can educate lawmakers as to what is going on. She is making a difference. She was born to make a difference. And I'm pleased to announce our next guest that I just met this week. Keisha Richardson is another one who has been through some really dark things. But she's got a gorgeous smile and a great attitude, and she's advocating and getting involved. And these are two that are not letting what happened to them stop them and cripple them and silence their voice. And I'm looking at others here and online. There are hundreds of thousands of you. The enemy has tried to silence your voice, but we say our voices will not be silenced. So without further ado, Keisha Richardson.
All right. Hello, everybody. Keisha here. I want to thank you guys for letting me come up to speak here today. It's very kind. I'm also with the CARES Project. I'm a co-host with my father, Dale Richardson. Shout out to my dad. He's great. Father of the Year. But pretty much what happened to me, I guess. So in early 2020, my father and I were exposing the improper contagion mitigations for the COVID pandemic. He's a mechanical engineering technologist with a bachelor degree in technology. I worked for the provincial government at a maximum security prison and hospital for the criminally and mentally insane, and we were exposing the criminal negligence that was going on, and we tried taking various agencies that were involved to court, the Saskatchewan Health Authority being one, which was my provincial governing body, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, some local banks and things and the like or whatever. When we tried to go into court against those various agencies, they grabbed us in front of the court, took us to separate facilities and tortured us. My dad was strapped to a table, drugged against his will for 3 weeks, and I was taken to my place of employment and held in a small room, locked down for 23 hours a day for 8 days. And I was interrogated by 6 or 7 male police officers, search under my clothes and things like that. In that hearing, we had our home taken from us, all of our cars, corporate assets. My little sister was taken by the courts. We have not seen her since. It's been 5 years. She was 16 months at the time. And this was a direct result to what we were trying to expose to help people keep their businesses open, their churches, and things like that. When I got out of the facility, like I said, we didn't have anything. Even my place was taken, and all of my belongings. I ended up fleeing to the U.S. because I'm a Native American Indian under the Jay Treaty. And it's supposed to be just as easy here, or better here in the U.S. For natives than it is in Canada. But when I came to the border on October 1st of 2020, I brought the evidence of what happened to me to Montana Sweetgrass Port of Entry, and the U.S. border agents, they took all of my travel documents, including my tribal citizenship card, my enrollment information, my passport, my birth certificate, driver's license, everything that I had. They violated Title 18 laws, handed me over to ICE, said that I was undocumented, and then drove me to the Arizona-Mexican border with Mexicans that they were going to throw across the border. By God's grace, I didn't end up there. They drove me backwards to Pahrump, Nevada, where I spent 7 months in a military detention center where they contracted immigrants to stay. And my dad was hounding the Canadian consulate for like 7 months to confirm my Indigenous status. Eventually they did, and I was released, but not on my own recognizance. Immigration ended up forcing me under like this ISAP program. It's like an American supervisor program where you have to live with single American men. And they trafficked me around the states, drugged me, beat me, held me at gunpoint, sexually abused me, recorded it, put it online for profit. I ended up constantly on and off the street due to this. I couldn't work without permission from immigration. I couldn't leave the house, city, or state without permission. So they said, even if you tried to leave or run away, then we will grab you and send you to a third country. The only reason I did get away is because one day I asked a church if they could help me after I had another occurrence of getting the gun pulled on me, and they decided to call the police and they intervened. And then after that, I was constantly on and off the street because I just couldn't get any help. The courts took the case out of the criminal court and put it into the family court to try and get rid of everything with one of the guys who pulled the gun on me. And nothing came of it. So I've seen this happen quite a bit. It makes sense a lot of what Jennifer is saying and other people I've come across. But anyways, a lot of this happened because of my father and I's Christian values, where we think that it's our duty to help the fatherless, the widow, and the oppressed, like stated in Isaiah 58. And we thought as Christians it's our duty to make sure that people don't have to suffer the consequences of potential death or harm to their families during like early pandemic before the lockdowns, and we were punished and persecuted for it. Like I said, we still haven't seen my sister. I don't even know if she's alive. We don't get pictures or calls or anything with her. My dad, he tried to come to the U.S. to help me after I was released, but they'd done the same thing to him. He had a passport he picked up that morning that was good for 10 years, the border people, they did the same thing to him. They grabbed him, they put him in detention in Colorado, in Aurora, where they were sacking Tina Peters in the courts, and he was filing all this information in the courts, which would have helped her as well, but then they deported him back to Canada, and someone came to where I was and assaulted me again. The documents that he created actually outlined how the improper contagion mitigation for the pandemic was used for the election interference, bioterrorism in Canada and the US, human trafficking, treason, and crimes of aggression. And these are all things that are now coming out openly. I mean, we've seen Pierre Poilievre talk about this in government back in Canada, and the information that was transferred from the Winnipeg biolabs over to the Chinese and things like that. Unfortunately, because of the situation in Canada, nothing is really being done because of their influence with China. But that's kind of, I guess, what happened with me. I got to see how all of the different various agencies were using things like HHS, DHS, ICE, the family courts, and the criminal courts, and how they were all working together to kind of create the circumstances for children to go missing. I was treated like an undocumented child despite being an American Indian with full rights under the Jay Treaty and Article 6 of the Constitution, which any treaty ratified by the Senate is the supreme law of the land. So I have just as many rights here as anyone else. But I decided to make the CARES project because I tried talking to various medias, and none of them were reporting on what was happening. And so I was like, I better just try and find a way to make a voice for the voiceless. And so I did, and I started coming across families across the board in US and Canada who had experienced the same thing like me and my dad, that were not getting help. And so I was able to kind of like put those pieces together, and the same thing, the system that they're using with a lot of these undocumented migrants and children that come over is now exactly the same way that they're processing and attacking American children, and whether it be American or Native, or, you know, even if they, whatever they look like, it doesn't matter what they look like, they're all getting it from every angle. So, you know, I'm glad that you guys brought me to share the story. I was able to go with Jen yesterday to submit some documents to Senator Rand Paul's office, and that outlines a lot of the information surrounding the human trafficking, what's going on with the family courts, how it relates to the treason. Ultimately, all of this is to destroy our society and break our homes. They separate you from the people who care and love about you, exactly, especially the parents that are good, that actually genuinely love and support the kids. They want to separate you from your support system so that they can easier separate and destroy the family and make those kids worse going on in the future. So I love what everyone is doing, and I thank you again for letting me come up to share my story, and I look forward to more of that in the future.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. Now, we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to introduce to you Sherry Brown. Now, many of you know about Family Forward Project, and you know the names of Kathleen Arthur and Connie Reguly and Maureen O'Neill Davis, kind of the three founders. But Sherry Brown is kind of an unsung hero that's behind the scenes. I don't think most people have no idea how much she does behind the scenes. Every time we come to DC, she's working on appointments. She's working on organizing things. She's very involved in Connecticut in advocating for families and helping families who have been through trauma and the separation, and she's just an amazing resource, and she has become my friend. And so I want you to listen to this amazing woman, Sherry Brown.
Okay, I've been listening to everyone and looking very much forward to sharing a few words about my story, but largely about the attachment disruption. That is the attachment disruption trauma that is affecting our children as they are taken from us, processed through the system, often returned to us. And I also want to talk about adoption. Adoption is a dirty word to many of us. They take our children and threaten us with adopting them out. But let us not forget those, as Keisha just said, watch for the widows and the orphans and take care of them. And there are children that do need us, do need forever homes, do not have parents currently capable of taking care of them. Some of the states have restoration of parental rights laws and some don't. check out yours. Connecticut doesn't have one. We're in the process of getting one in place. If your state doesn't have one, get one. Talk to us. We'll help you figure out how to get it done. If they have the right to take your rights, there ought to be a legal pathway to get them back. So, my journey started being born the oldest and only girl of all brothers to two parents who have reactive attachment disorder. They were born during the Depression, kicked through homes and work camps and foster homes, and eventually adopted for the money. My mother was adopted for the money. My father, not so lucky. He was an identical twin at birth, separated, never saw his brother again. I have to say I adopted a special needs sibling group of 3, and the good Lord saw fit to send me a set of identical twins. So I love the God thing there. I always love seeing his hand at work. I have a long story, like most of us do, about the abuse of the system, even having adopted my children. They were sent through 3 years of every 3 months moving foster homes. My daughters by 8th grade had attended 20 schools. First thing I did was bring in a governess teacher and say, find the holes in their education. I don't want you to fill the holes, just tell me what they are, right? We want to know how to help our kids. So when I was 6 years old, the Lord put a calling on my heart to adopt. Never doubted it, believed it wholly, obviously did not adopt at 6 years old. Roll forward, lived a life, finally did it when I was in my 40s. I knew I would adopt a sibling group, and I knew that they would be traumatized. I had no idea the level to which we can traumatize children. When we understand what's going on with attachment disruption trauma, when we understand how it affects our children, the cycle perpetuated by the system, the trajectory of children not helped with that brain trauma is dismal. They're going to end up in prison, sex traffickers, prostitutes, hooked on drugs. Every awful area of society is open to them, and we do not have the right areas of society waiting to catch them and help them. We all hear about foster children aging out of the system. Many of those are children taken from their parents, adopted out, not helped to make the adoption successful, end up with disrupted adoptions as teenagers, nobody wants them, and they're turned loose at 18 years old with nothing and no one. We fight for permanency, belonging, connection. This is what we need as human beings. So if we talk about attachment disruption, if you are a pregnant mother and you suffer from things, simple things like anxiety, that can affect your fetus. It can instill in them the need that they're not safe. It's a thing that goes on through your chemistry. If you're born and you are born to a 14-year-old who doesn't know how to take care of you, if you're born to anyone who's more interested in drugs or alcohol, they're not taking care of you. A multitude of reasons that we're all familiar with. What happens to the child's brain? Scientifically, we know that God designed the brain to move forward from the emotional start towards the logic center of your brain. However, if you are suffering from attachment disruption trauma, your brain goes backward to the survival part of your brain. When you're living in a survival mode, which many of our children are, even if they're returned to you from the system, they're not coming back the same. And you need to learn to parent them differently, to accept them where they are, understand how their brain is working. Many of our school systems, many of our pediatricians, our doctors don't understand it. I believe through the work I've done for 20 years now that they will label them ADHD or many other diagnoses when in fact what's going on is it's an attachment disruption and their brain is not functioning. You can medicate them all you want, but if they don't have connection, if they don't have someone that makes them feel safe, someone that gives them that sense of safety and belonging. Thank you. Thank you very much. Safety issues are perpetually a thing. What they come out in is they don't trust their trusted caregivers. And then that's what becomes fueling the system repeatedly and repeatedly. You get your children back, the children are suffering with this condition. The system can look at it and say, you're not doing it right, you're still a bad parent. That's not what's going along, not what's happening. We need our system to come alongside our families, however the families are formed. Come alongside, help the children, help the families. Stop this nonsense of pulling it apart. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Hello, we're back. We have a few more speakers coming up for you. Very, very interesting. The next couple are going to be talking about the corruption in our court systems associated. First up, we have James Kelly from New York. Please welcome Jim to the stage.
Thank you very, very much. And there we go. Good afternoon to we the people, the voters and the grantors of the Constitution, the creators of the government. Good afternoon to the trustees, those officials within the government, and good afternoon to the beneficiaries, those people who are here and may not be voters. My name is James Kelly, and I stand before my fellow grantors and I'll be speaking today in the capacity of, I suppose, a private attorney general, for lack of a better, not that they're ever used, but for lack of a better perspective. I'm going to present information on a great many of our trustees within our organizations, and what I present will be shocking to the public consciousness. We heard a couple of very traumatic stories before, and it's easy to shut those out as, oh, that's isolated. That's just one. I like to go through and I like to go beyond that and look at the government from a different perspective. And I'm going to call upon you, the people, to pass an indictment that will require an amendment, an alteration of the government as it exists now, preferably by peaceful means. But ultimately, it needs to change by any means necessary. And I'm hoping that can be done peacefully. The government and a great many of the trustees within it are at war with we the people. And it provides us an absence of due process. Procedural due process is the only absolute right that we have as individuals. There is no greater public good upon which it can be limited. And it would be an act of insanity to attack this country in a military capacity. However, to attack it within, in an ideological basis, it has been very effective. I'd like to speak to the Second Amendment as one of the reasons why we're being attacked. The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is not for personal protection. It's not for hunting. It's to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government, which is what we have now, and that's established by Federalist Essay 29. The other key right is the right to free speech. And it was Jeff Younger that has articulated these issues well to say that it's the middle class that's being attacked. It's the united will of we the people that is being attacked. Division is being caused. And there are several ways right now that the government wars against us to fundamentally weaken the middle class. And they do this by attacking our money and our families. What I'm going to explain as it relates to the state of New York, from which I hail, I'm sure you're under the impression that you have rights. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to procedural due process. You have the freedom of religion, the right to contract, the right to marry. the right to the companionship, care, custody, and control of our children. Well, if that's the case, great. Then we do have a free country. Other than that, if we don't have those rights, if those rights have been converted to privileges, well, then we have a tyranny, and you're inmates, free-range inmates, and nothing more. Now, the Supreme Court of the United States said in 1803 that Marbury versus Madison, that which is repugnant to the Constitution is void and without effect. The reason your rights to marry are deprived, you probably don't even realize it. Yeah, I've got to go down, I've got to get a marriage license. Well, that's to protect racial purity in the United States. Back in 1910, there was a move to standardize this so that there would be no interracial marrying. Loving v. Virginia in 1967 put an end to that. So now, every time somebody gets married with a marriage license, they end up being deprived of those rights that I just spoke of, under color of law, without due process, serving no greater public good. And I've had people that are knowledgeable people say, yeah, so. Well, when it comes time for a divorce, then the judge that's involved in that divorce necessarily becomes an accessory after the fact to the deprivation of those rights and the constructive fraud of selling you rights you already possess back. And now all of a sudden people are saying, yeah, you know, you're right, maybe it's not just one person telling a story, now maybe it's a whole bunch of people. It doesn't stop there. It gets worse. Title IV of the Social Security Act. That's a problem. It was started off with good intentions. But what it does is it gives federal incentive grant money to the states. And that federal incentive grant money is a substantial pecuniary interest. You go into a courtroom, you have a judge that's supposed to be an impartial tribunal, the first element of substantive due process. An impartial tribunal, a judge cannot have an interest in the outcome of the case before the court. And while that may be personally, in the judge's personal capacity, true, in the judge's official capacity, because the judge has both, it's not true, because the judge is the personification of the state, and the state has a substantial pecuniary interest in maximizing this. So now you have a situation where the judge will assign custodial and non-custodial status to the parents in the courtroom just to be able to issue an order of child support so that they can get more federal incentive grant money. Well, when the judge deprives rights in this way, they shed their jurisdiction under the doctrine of Ex parte Young 1908. So they're only acting in their personal capacity, and we have a system of frauds. The first is the constructive fraud of the marriage license. The second is the fraud upon the court that the judge actually maintains jurisdiction while perpetuating this impartial tribunal. No, you violate an impartial tribunal before the judge even takes the bench. He shed his jurisdiction, or she has shed her jurisdiction. And they go on to file child support orders, to mail them to you, to electronically email them to you, mail fraud, wire fraud, to file with the federal government to access Title IV. Well, now you've got false claims against the federal government. Nobody does anything. This is not news. This is not a secret. This is written into the code. Fraud vitiates everything. There's a third main area that the judiciary violates due process. They refuse to allow a party in most courts, and especially in New York State, to record their own proceedings in the courtroom. Well, the Sixth Amendment says you are supposed to have compulsory process in order to have exculpatory evidence. Okay. You're also supposed to be able to bring in a recording device. This, I would argue, is protected under the Second Amendment. Let me explain. District of Columbia versus Heller, 2008. The Supreme Court went back to a 1771 definition of what arms are, and it's something that can be held in your hands for defense. Yes. Well, the argument then comes up, gee, you can't use that because they didn't have cell phones back when the Constitution was written. Go see Catano versus the Commonwealth of Massachusetts 2016 with respect to stun guns. That argument is void. So, that is protected by the Second Amendment in accordance with Federalist Essay number 29, but they insist on depriving you of these rights. And the only reason for them to deprive you of these rights is because they do not want you to incidentally preserve evidence of judicial errors, judicial misconduct, judicial high crimes, and judicial misdemeanors that are impeachable. Well, okay. Fraud vitiates everything. Let's look deeper. Title IV didn't come into being in the judiciary. It came into being in the legislative branch. And it's maintained in the legislative branch. Worse than that, if you look at the Constitution, there is no severability clause that says, well, gee, if the judiciary went bad in its entirety, and it has, then the legislative and the executive branches are okay. No, they're not. There is no severability clause. There cannot be a severability clause in the Constitution because all severability clauses discuss what is lawful under the Constitution. So let's look at the legislature. If we have a problem with a judge, we are to go to the legislature to file a petition for impeachment. See Luke Lawless filing against federal Judge James H. Peck, 1826. And James H. Peck was impeached. If you go and you try that now, you realize that you have a problem, a fundamental problem where the separation of powers has been erased and the system of checks and balances has been completely undermined. You see, Federalist Essay, I believe it's 78 or 79, says that the union of the judiciary with either of its other coordinate branches would give us everything to fear. And we have everything to fear right now. Yeah. So if you look at the general population, attorneys have a prevalence of 1 in 1,000 in most counties. Manhattan is the most populous with attorneys. There's 44 per 1,000. If you look at the New York State Assembly, it's 1 in 3 seats. If you look in the Judiciary Committee within the Assembly, it is all but 1 seat. And of course the chair is an attorney as well. This is unequal representation in our legislative branch. We are overwhelmed by a supermajority of a lobbying organization that has actually been able to affect and vote on statutes against us. And it has undermined any ability to have accountability. So, one of the peaceful means that I would strongly recommend is that for those of us that decide we want to go and we want to work within the legislative branch, to create an impeachment committee that has no more than one attorney on it and will decide whether or not a case should be brought before the General Assembly or the lower house for impeachment. Not the Judiciary Committee that has a supermajority, not the Commission on Judicial Conduct that is a private organization that buries everything, but actually having useful control. And the other thing that we need to do is we need to know our rights and we need to vigorously enforce them. And whether it's openly like I like to do or surreptitiously like a lot of other people have done, we need to go into the courts. We need to record these judges. I have seen in the last couple of weeks that there have been an increasing number of judges that have been removed from the bench and actually jailed because of recordings. More of that needs to happen. So thank you for listening to me. I hope that this has given you a different perspective. I hope it has shocked your conscience. And instead of my individual story or another individual story, you can't get away from this. This is something that you come back, you think about it, you watch the video, you watch the live stream. I'm not pulling from some obscure place. I'm pulling from your memories. So thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you. We know that it's the system And the system has many facets, all of which are broken. They're not working as designed, or perhaps they are working as designed and it's all nefarious and we have to fight it regardless. So next, I'd like to introduce Grandma from Illinois, who has a story about medical kidnapping and the fight for her grandchild. Please welcome Sherry Yount Dare.
Good night. I am not a public speaker, so bear with me. So, when I decided to come on this trip, I really did not know what I was going to accomplish. I didn't know what to expect. You know, I was just kind of going at it, just open-ended. I've learned so much over the last few days, and I've made a few contacts, you know, but the one thing that I have realized is that, you know, a lot of the legislators, they don't know what Title IV funding is, whether it's 4E or 4D. You know, I reached out to Senator Mike Bost, who's mine. He's my elected official, and I got the same response. You know, have you thought about reaching out to your local representative? And I'm just like, you know, buddy, I wouldn't be here if I hadn't already done that. You know, nothing's getting accomplished at the state level, so, you know, why not go federal and bring the attention to that funding? I wholeheartedly believe that that is what has kept my grandson from being back home with our family. I've said this a few times. My daughter was barely 19 when she had him, like 2 months into her 19th, you know, birthday. She was very sick the entire time she was pregnant. She called me one night. It was January 31st, 22. And she said, Mom, I was scooting Keegan up on his boppy pillow and I felt a pop in his shoulder. And this is, you know, super late at night. I had to be at work 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just like, well, is he screaming? Is he acting like he's in pain? He's probably fine. And then I'm like, well, first time mom, I get it, and she's young. So I said, you know, go ahead and take him to the hospital, get him checked out. I'll meet you there. You know, we go, they do a range of motion, they advise against scans and all that, and they said, you know, it's probably just a fluke thing, he's fine. The report showed, you know, that it said that there were no signs of abuse. Sent them on their way and said, if you notice anything else, bring him back. She took him back the next day. Biggest mistake. They did a full body scan. They said multiple fractures, different stages of healing, rib fractures, mind you, subdermal hematoma, bucket fractures at the knees. They shipped them to St. Louis Children's, and they let me go with, and I stayed the entire week there, where it was the same thing. The child abuse pediatrician, you know, this is nothing but shaken baby syndrome. And then, of course, she changed her diagnosis to battered baby syndrome because there was no retinal hemorrhaging, no damage, nothing. And so, you know, we asked about getting a second opinion. We were told no. We asked about genetic mutation testing because we have a history of vitamin D deficiencies in our family. Like my dad had rickets. My dad's sister, my aunt, has osteoporosis and osteomalacia, which is adult onset rickets. You know, and then there's multiple family members who have, you know, vitamin D issues. And she said that there's not enough family history to warrant the cost of the genetic mutation testing. Mind you, at this point, he had not been removed, you know, but we were told no and no. So, long story short, he was removed. Whenever they said they were going to remove him, I begged for placement, but they said that at the time I was a suspect because I'd been around him. And so they initially placed him with my sister. And then after a couple of months, the stress, she couldn't handle it anymore. The DCFS was in her house several times a week, trying to coerce her basically to say negative things about us, and, you know, like that we had abused him at 5 weeks old. We had abused this child, and she couldn't handle it. She was terrified that if she didn't start going along with it, that they were going to take her kid. So she asked for them to remove him and to place him with me. It didn't happen. They put him directly into foster care. So what I've been fighting is, like, as this case has gone on it's been 3. He turned 3 in December. We've not seen him since August 29th of last year. Anyway, it has been difficult. It's been so difficult because we are a loving family. I have raised, my husband and I have raised 3 beautiful children. They all have beautiful souls. They're amazing people. And just knowing that something like this has happened to our family, it's just crazy how many other families out there have had to go through this. But anyway, as this case has gone on, I have learned and I've dug into things. I've researched so much. And then what gets me the most is the Title IV funding. If a child is placed in relative care, then they don't receive the federal funding, which basically reimburses the state for all the foster care money. And it's, if they're placed with family, they don't get that, but if they're placed in foster care, they do get that. And I think it was 2014, Illinois did not meet the criteria to have enough children, like the certain percentage that were in care. They didn't meet the criteria to receive that Title IV funding. So since then, they have not been placing children with family as they should. They will, of course, place some with them, but it's just a horrible, horrible thing, and they're not held accountable for it. So, like, a few of the requirements in order to receive that funding is, within the first 30 days of a child being removed, they are supposed to send written notification to all adult family members. Nobody on either side, all 4 sides of the families, received a thing. But again, they're not held accountable for it. They still receive the funding. And so that has been one of the biggest things that I've been fighting, as well as, you okay? As well as the medical kidnapping. We didn't get the chance to, prove that that's what the problem was, that he had a brittle bone disease. I mean, I got his records. I sent him to a doctor in Boston, and he asked for some pictures as well, because I said, he's a little bow-legged, and, I received a diagnosis just based off of the medical records. And it wasn't the Ehlers-Danlos, like, a lot of people seem to think that he just immediately diagnoses kids with, but it was infantile vitamin D deficiency rickets. And we've not been able to get the judge to receive that, that it was not abuse. And so to this day, my daughter, who has always worked in healthcare, who has done like home health care, or she actually worked at the Pavilion in Champaign, taking care of DCFS children, DCFS youth, where they passed her background in order to do that in the mental hospital, but she couldn't take care of her own child. And 85 to 90% of the youth in care there are only there because they don't have placement for them. Why don't they have placement? Because they're not placing kids with families as they should. That's right, and it is wrong. And that is what I have been wanting to voice. I don't feel like it's heard enough. You hear a child's been removed, it's like, the parents were abusive. Well, no, it's not true. It's not true all the time. What'd you guys say? It's only like 15%, 12% of the time that the child is actually abused. All these thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids are removed. In Illinois alone, the OIG released their report a couple of weeks ago. In Illinois, there are 2,000 children who are in care who are missing. And that terrifies me. I worry every day if that's going to end up being my grandson. So, but that is what I wanted to bring to the table today, and I appreciate you guys so much.
Oh, nope. And I just want to thank this grandma. And And I want everyone watching this to know this is her first time getting up and talking about this. I think she did an amazingly eloquent job.
Thank you.
She pulled together the factions. She told the truth. Every word that came out of her mouth was spot on. And you did it without blubbering all over the
I know.
place.
Did great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry Youngdare. Thank you very, very much.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, together we're going to announce our next speaker. His name is Carlos. I'd like to call him Dr. Carlos Rivera. He is a pediatrician who has come up against the system, trying to do what's right for us, and the system turned on him. Please welcome Carlos to the stage.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Feedback. My name is Dr. Carlos Rivera. I'm a pediatrician from Long Island, New York. And I would like to thank all of you here for giving me the opportunity and extending the gracious invitation to come here and allow me to spend this day with you and to speak in front of you. So it's interesting because I've been through a lot of the fun that Title 4D and Family Court has had to offer all of us, and it's been quite a journey. It started for me around 2011 when I was getting divorced, and I'm going to bridge this as quick as I can. What I found is that at the time, my true intention was to make things as easy for my children to transition from and cause the least amount of stress for them and their mom. And what had happened was I signed such a terrible settlement of agreement that out of guilt, but it made me responsible for about $15,000 a month. So I had agreed to pay the mortgage on the home, insurances, gas, everything available with the understanding that when our youngest child entered kindergarten that their mom would assist in their care and probably just take a little bit off of the financial burden. Unfortunately for me, my ex-wife had better plans and was much better at the navigating the system than I had ever imagined or ever thought was possible. So the problem was, like you, I was raised to believe in the system, that it's just, it's going to look out for us, and it's fair. And I found out the hard way that it wasn't. And my first indication of that was that when my ex took me back to court for arrears, though I had given her close to $500,000 in 4 years, because my settlement agreement was so egregious, I ended up going to trial, and during the trial, I was even speaking. I hired an attorney that I used to take care of his children, and he was well known in the area, and I thought that he would look out for me. He sent me to court with a colleague who I questioned his ability to practice whatsoever, but I was saying I don't feel comfortable, it's not going well, and I was really being beaten up by my ex's attorney, and when I spoke to my attorney, he's like, well, they're allowed some latitude, and basically there was lying during the trial, which I thought was interesting, but I felt reassured that I had provided so much documentation that it's going to be clear that I was providing above and beyond what could actually be expected at the time, and nearly my entire salary of what I was making at the time. So what I found out there is that, there was a lot of lying allowed in court, and whoever's the biggest aggressor actually wins. And to my surprise, the judge seemed to be buying everything that my ex-wife was claiming. And what I really started to find out, and I later found out because I was also taking care of the children of a court officer, is that there was a prejudice against me to begin with since I was a professional. And the thought was like, let's get the doctor. And I was surprised by that. And when my ex was in court, I remember the magistrate asking her, well, if he cannot come up with this sum of money that you claim that he owes, would you request incarcerating him? And my ex immediately and emphatically answered, if that's what it takes. And I thought it was odd that it was just that simple, that someone could just say, I want him to go to jail, and that's the way it would happen. So I really didn't believe I was going to jail. I thought that I gave all this documentation, that I was in the clear, and that my life would resume. And it was very, very stressful to continue my career and have this over me. And I'm sure that all of you can understand how when you're working or trying to maintain your own life, the stress of what happens to you in court is overwhelming. And you just, oh my gosh, I really can't do this. So a few months went by, and my current wife and I, she opens up the mail, and I see this look of shock on her face. And she told me, they're sentencing you. You have to appear before the judge for incarceration. And I was in disbelief. I said, you have to be kidding me. There's no way. So the next thing I know, I'm in front of the judge. My ex was awarded a $160,000 judgment, and I was given the opportunity to come up with half at the arraignment, and I didn't. I told my attorney, might as well ask me for $1 million because I'm broke. I have nothing. Next thing I know, the judge is sentencing me to 6 months in jail. I went to a medium maximum facility out in Long Island to be incarcerated with drug dealers and felons and any kind of person you could imagine. And I remember being in the holding cell in the court, which I didn't know there was a holding cell in the courts, but there was. So I was in the holding cell in disbelief. And the next thing I know, I'm in a tiny holding cell, and the process of being booked is very, very interesting, and a lot of people yell at you the entire way. But I found myself in a small cell, kind of like you see in the movies, like in Alcatraz, and there was feces on the wall. It was a mess from people detoxing, and I was thoroughly disgusted. And the next morning is kind of funny because at the time I was quite a bit heavier. I'm a stress eater, so I ballooned up quite a bit. And they were like, Rivera, you come up for a shower. And I was like, okay. And they handed me a towel about this big, which I kind of found laughable. But I did that. And next thing I know, I was lucky enough to find myself on a work crew there. And what was interesting is that my fear of being in jail was what you would expect to be in jail. Was there going to be gang rapes? Was I going to get beat up? And I had that fear because I was always a nerd my entire life. I was an Eagle Scout. All my friends, we studied hard in school and strove to do our best. And, a lot of my friends had all these crazy spring break stories or just high school stories, and I never had them. And I'm the only one to this day who's ever gone to jail. So I found that kind of funny. But when I went in, I was very, very scared. And the corrections officer the prison officer immediately says, "What are you here for? Bad scripts." And I was like, "No, I had nothing to do with prescribing narcotics. I'm here for child support." And he looked at me curiously, and as I was walking in with they give you a blanket, it's called a roll-up. Now I'm expecting to see different gangs, and I see a bunch of guys sitting at a table, and one of them was a very, very muscular guy with an undershirt, a tank top, or a wife beater on. And as I'm walking in, they said, "You're the doctor?" And I was amazed. I was just like, how did they know who I am? And I later began to call it the Independent Inmate News Network, because apparently the inmates found out about things before the guards. But I was very, very nervous. Like, how did they know? And oh my God, my first day here, I'm about to get beat up right now. And luckily that didn't happen. And shortly after, in the same day, I'm walking in, between the bunks. And I was held in a big gymnasium with about 40 different bunk beds, and they were work crews assigned. Everybody had a different color with what their assignment was to be. And as I'm there, all of a sudden my back's turned, and I hear, "Dr. Rivera, Dr. Rivera," and I just stopped, and I was like, "There's no effing way that somebody knows me in this place." And I turn around, and the kid's like, "Do you remember me? You're my doctor." And I was just like, oh my God. Like, I was like, "Oh, hi, how you doing? How you been?" So it was a very, very odd experience. And it turns out that several of the corrections officers that I was there with, I took care of their children. So eventually they looked out for me the best they could. But I remember on my work crew, I was preparing for an event that they were having for the corrections officers, or some kind of like bring your kid to family, family day or whatever. And one of the officers like, "Hey doc, maybe we should have you come in, because I don't want the kids to see you in prison garb here." And I agreed, and I went inside. And that was when my wife and patients had found an activist from the Americans for Legal Reform named Gary Jacobs to come and interview me. And I was so happy because I was like, oh my God, no one's going to believe this story, and maybe they can help get me out. And it was a very, very difficult road because by that point I had a different attorney, and I was very, very hopeful that things were going to change. And that's when I really started to realize just the lies. And I had inmates telling me that, you know, Doc, you're never going to get out of here. And I was like, no, my attorney's going to get me out. He says he's going to get me out on a, you know, habeas corpus or something like that. Jim would know better. When after a few months, I realized I'm not getting out of here. And one of the things on my journey that I found was that having hope removed from you is probably one of the worst things that could ever happen, because I really, really believed in the system, and I believed in justice, and it was gone. And I realized that was a very, very painful experience for me. And it's interesting because this is a 6-month process now that I'm going through. So while I was there, a pediatrician had found out about my plight and wanted to meet with me, which I thought was interesting. So I go to the visitation center, which is the inmates are on one side, there's a glass partition, and this pediatrician is there with her husband, and basically they're offering me a job. And I had to laugh because even for me, I'm sitting there with this jumpsuit that says inmate across my chest in large letters, and I'm on an interview for a job as a pediatrician, which I was like, this is just hard for me to believe at all. So I was lucky enough to resume practicing, which I really thought was going to be over. I really thought my career was going to be over. But my ex really didn't let up, and she kept bringing me to court for contempt. And what I found out was, even though I had already spent 6 months in jail, one of the things I want people out there who listening is, a lot of people think that once you serve jail time and you have some type of judgment against you, that judgment is erased, but it's not. So while I was in jail, I was receiving letters from child support enforcement to pay money, and they had destroyed my career. So it's like, how do you expect me to write a check from jail? So when I came out, my ex was now claiming that I was making more money than I was, and she wanted me to go back to court to file motions of contempt to have me resentenced to return to jail. So there's a lot more to it. I'm trying to synopsis, but another thing that I found is I'm lucky enough to return as a pediatrician, but the stress of jail hanging over you became very, very difficult, and I found myself just hiding between patients and crying in exam rooms, and then I would have to come out when it was obvious that I was crying, and they're like, Doc, you okay? It's like, oh yeah, I have allergies. But at that point, I started to become active with the Americans for Legal Reform and Jim Kelly and others to court watch and to help people out. And I witnessed so many things that were just absolutely horrible, and judges abusing power and ruining lives, and the chit chat that happens between cases when they're actually making fun of the defendants. And I found it very, very disheartening, and it took a lot out of me. And as with you, your life continues, and it becomes, the torture continues as you're trying to pick yourself up and move on with life. And I really found that, 2 of my children had stopped speaking to me of my 4, and it became very, very painful. And then when COVID hit, my ex used that as the perfect opportunity to keep access from the remaining 2 who were speaking to me away. And I became very despondent, and I want to share with people the dark side of what happens, because in that major, major depression, I really just had nowhere to go, and I was lost, and I never experienced anything quite like major depression, where honestly suicidal ideation just hung over my head. I envied my friends who passed away, and I've never experienced anything more painful than having no access to your children. And I think of all the tragedies I've experienced in my life, like the loss of my parents and all other things, combined, it paled in comparison to alienation. So to this day, I still have child support enforcement chasing me. The interest on my arrears goes up $1,000 a month. It's at about $700,000 now, and child support enforcement garnishes 2/3 of my salary, which is a whole ordeal in itself. Like, you can't get out of this system, and this is why the system's it's actually perfect with Title 4D, because you can never get out of the system. Child support enforcement will have me in their grips for the rest of my life. I will never be able to pay my way out of this, and I'll just continue to the financial abuse that takes place. And the last thing I want to mention while I'm here, and I thank you for the time and allowing me this much time, but as I'm experiencing this, and I was really fighting with depression in New York with the vaccine mandates. Prior to the vaccine mandates for COVID, New York had removed the religious exemption for vaccines. And I found that really got my attention, because suddenly now I was having children who were looking to go to specialists that were now being denied care because they weren't getting routine vaccinations, or they were behind on schedule. And it really made me curious. It's like, they can do anything they want. How can the courts take away your religious freedom? How do they do this? And since then, I've been quietly in the sidelines questioning religious, the removal of religious exemptions, and in particular, New York, of course, California, Maine, and Connecticut, you no longer could get them. In all the other 46 states, you can. And honestly, when I was vaccinating children, I believed in vaccines and the benefits of them. And I really didn't think, like, what kind of religion really wouldn't allow you to vaccinate? But I know much more about vaccines now than I ever did, mostly through parents, like you guys were pointing out. Doctors don't know a lot about these topics, like parental alienation. I never heard of until it happened to me, and I was a pediatrician. But with vaccines and religious exemptions, I didn't realize that many of the vaccines are derived from fetal tissue, and that tissue is actually harvested from fetuses that are still alive at the time they're harvesting these tissues, which to this day, I found amazing. And this journey has brought me now to things that I didn't really know. The child trafficking, foster care, the CPS system, all of these things are horrors beyond imagination. And to this point, I still don't want to believe it's there, but it is. And I think that my path has brought me onto this, and that there's a reason that I should speak out. And there's been quite a hiatus since I was speaking. But inspired by you today, I think I'm going to reintroduce myself into podcasting so people can tell these stories, and what happened to you can get out, and people can realize that we can, fight for a change. So I really want to thank all of you who continued this fight when I was too weak to carry on. And I've been lucky with the tremendous support network behind me, and the people like Connie and Terry and others here who continue the fight with steadfast determination. So thank you for your time. Keep up the fight, and thank you for the inspiration to keep going.
Okay, so maybe you can tell my wardrobe has changed a bit. It's gotten a little chilly here, but we're really close to wrapping up with some very special finales. Thank you, Dr. Carlos Rivera. I'm sorry for everyone's struggle. As you can see, all of our stories have many aspects, and we only have a few minutes to speak of them here. So everyone that came this year, come back next year. Plan on sharing your story. Up next, we have a mom who's going to share her story. She is from Arkansas. I want to mention we have about 18 states represented here this year. So that's pretty cool. Here we have Mary Beard. Did I say Mary?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi. I am a single mom from Fayetteville, Arkansas. Gathering my nerves right now. This is my first time ever sharing, so just bear with me. In 2018, my son was brutally beaten by a confidential informant who worked for the Springdale Police Department, working at Piney Ridge Treatment Center in Fayetteville. I used to work at Piney Ridge Treatment Center as well. This woman approached me at work and said that she needed a place to stay. And I welcomed her into my home because she had 3 children of her own, and she just found out she was pregnant. Her mother had kicked her out. Please excuse me. Her mother had kicked her out of her home, and she played a pity party to move into my home. Backtrack, she is a Catholic raised woman, and she came from, the witchcraft and all of that. So she saw the darkness that I carried as a child. I was molested by my father at 18 months old. And to bring it all together, he was a Freemason, and I had no idea that I was born into a home of Freemasons. And I had 3 older sisters. At 3 years old, I was then molested by my sister and my female cousin, who covered up what my father did so that I wouldn't remember what happened to me at 18 months old. I was raped to the point where my right leg was broken, and my mother lied and said that my sister had pushed me down the slide at McDonald's. So forward on, I worked my case for 1.5 years with Stacy Zimmerman as my judge in Washington County. I got an apartment. I was homeless for about maybe 2 weeks because I'd already had a job, and I was a hit the ground running type of mother. I never went without work. And I was working at Papa John's in Springdale, Arkansas as a store manager. And I was working with, lo and behold, a relative to Stacy Zimmerman, Danielle Zimmerman, who was a confidential informant as well. During that time, I was living in Fayetteville, and my son was brutally beat by a black man and a Mexican woman who were confidential informants for Washington County. I did everything that CPS did, and of course, just like our brother here, I believed in justice. I believed that the system was going to do their job. They were going to arrest the people, find the people that did this. The man that took the charge for my son's beating got a misdemeanor of a lesser charge because he admitted to what he did. He told them that Mary, me, was at work and she did not know anything of what happened. Meanwhile, I didn't know, because Vanessa had already moved out of my home, that he had let Vanessa into my home while I was at work to do the job that she needed to do, to open up a CPS case, because I was targeted as a child to have my children ripped from me. I did counseling. I worked my case, and 6 months, I did not get to see my kids for 6 months after my kids were taken from me, and that was illegal. I didn't even get the 72-hour visit, a mandated visit. There was no proof that I did anything to my son or my daughter. Not that anything happened to her that I know of. They never talked about her at all. They just focused on my son. During my case, Danielle Zimmerman approached me at work, and she befriended me and sexually assaulted me, moved on to me as if she wanted to marry me because she was going to jail. She went to Washington County, and I told her I could not bail her out. Then when things fell through with her, I told her I didn't want to be friends with her, and she moved on. And then and she came back, and she was having boy problems with a man named Toby Howe, who was a known pedophile in Benton County and Washington County. They dropped him off on my doorstep because they broke up, and he came my way. That's a whole drama scene. I was with him for 1.5 years, and he was with me during my case, but I told him that he couldn't be around because he was facing charges himself, and I didn't trust him. But anytime I told him I didn't want to be with him or I didn't want him around, he would show up anyways. He ruined my character. He promised me that he would help me get my children back, where it was all a lie. In September 26th of 2020, my children were wrongfully TPR'd from me due to this man being in my life, and they couldn't use him against me because he had nothing to do with why my children were taken in the first place. They deemed me an unfit mother for having unsafe people around her children. He told me to hire a lawyer in the town, the same lawyer that he hired for his criminal charge that he was facing as well. I hired him, I paid him. They didn't appeal my case at all. And they also represent all the pedophiles and the gang members that actually work at the Piney Ridge Treatment Center. And all the other ones that don't work there. You know, he runs them through his office. And, Benton County and Washington County like to use confidential informants to bring mothers like me and take their children, because the woman that beat my son, she still has all 4 of her children, and I report against them and I get called, I'm the suspect, and everything is turned around on me. I have, in 2022, the beating started by Toby Howe. I was strangled, I was beat, I was sexually assaulted, I was being broken down to be a sex trafficking. And anytime I report anything, I get treated like I am crazy and that there's no injuries. I've been to multiple doctor's visits and they all treat me like I'm fine and there's nothing wrong with me, to cover up their abuse that they did to me. Stacy Zimmerman is no longer in the office of Washington County anymore because I am going to challenge her. I hope that I can stop the sex trafficking, the child trafficking that's going on in Washington, Benton County, as well as Oklahoma, because when I left Toby, I went to Oklahoma to get help, and it all followed me over to Oklahoma. They are the biggest scheme as well, and they go hand in hand with Oklahoma and Arkansas with the Freemasons and the Eastern Stars that Stacy Zimmerman is involved with as well, using them and the motorcycle clubs and stuff to get what they need done. I don't have much time left, but that's a short snippet of it, and just thank you for listening to me, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you very, very much, Mary. Thank you very, very much. It's always brave.
Yeah, thank you.
Always brave. We find our voices in front of each other. We are supportive. We are not alone. Everyone watching this, we are not alone.
Right.
And speaking of not being alone, we have a fabulous man behind the curtain. Brian.
So Brian Lee is an amazing advocate, and he's the one who comes here very early in the morning and puts this all together. He does so much work for every time we have a rally here. He's one of the he's the main one that puts together the staging and the sound system and all of that.
Puts all this up.
He's just an incredible dad, and we appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
A couple different topics I'll be talking about today. But first and foremost, thank you to the Family Forward Project for allowing me to speak at this event. It's an honor and a privilege to stand amongst my fellow advocates here in our nation's capital, rallying for change. What does it mean to serve? Served is defined as a form of action or activity by assisting others or offering a helping hand. There are many forms of service that can be rendered, such as police, fire, EMS, doctors, nurses, to also include legislators and congressmen. But one service that really sticks out to me is our nation's veterans and active duty men and women. Not many choose this form. Thank you. Not many choose this form of service, nor can they identify with it. But for those who take up the mantle, it's a code, a lifestyle, a career like no other. We ask these men and women to sign the dotted line, taking an oath, swearing and affirming she will support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. This often requires them to leave their homes for months, if not years, at a time. They understand the meaning of sacrifice and what that could lead to. In wartime situations, they face unthinkable situations just to return home with far too many burdens held down on their shoulders. For many, however, is having to come home to fight a completely different war. In family court and divorce courts, opposing attorneys, caseworkers, judges use wide ranges of tactics and strategies to portray our service members in a bad light. They are accused of being irresponsible, unpredictable, mentally and emotionally unstable. They claim our service members are even more vulnerable to committing a domestic violence act. Because of this, our veterans and active duty members have become a casualty of circumstance and treated like second-class citizens. They are withheld access to their children, denied their rights due process that they so fought for. Their benefits garnished, property seized. They become a statistic of suicide, and it's also said that 22 a day veterans in active duty take their own lives. You may be asking yourself, how do I know this? Well, because I am a veteran. I served 8 years in the U.S. Marine Corps with 2 combat tours in Iraq. I have also served as a Marine Corps liaison, working at the Bethesda National Medical Center, working with the wounded and their families. I never expected to have to fight such a war within our own borders. I have felt the disrespect and unjust acts firsthand. At the beginning of my battle, I was thanked and praised by the courts, only to have it twisted and used against me during proceedings. Even with all the evidence presented in my defense by 2 attorneys and at one point fighting pro se, it just did not matter. I was called delusional, crazy, self-absorbed, and was told I should seek mental health counseling and be put on meds. It didn't matter what I did then and possibly what I do today. It's apparent the courts have made up their minds. And nothing was going to change that narrative. No matter how many times I have filed seeking help for my kids, that I filed for the courts in order to seek more time with my kids. Through the years, I have served my community. I have come to know many of our veterans in active duty who have also faced such atrocities. Just to name a few: Yahya McClain, Stephen Ball, Roman Swab, Sean Pearson, Kyle Paskowitz, Mark Brunei, Christopher Rainbolt, Anthony Sabelli, Linda Steele, and Cash Jackson. I will say that out of these 10 that I've mentioned, not including myself, one of those individuals is no longer with us today. And they lost their own life a few years ago because they couldn't bear the weight that weighed down on them on how they were treated and that they couldn't see their own children. I ask you here today, when is enough going to be enough? Regardless to how one may serve, how many lives is it going to take to make change? Who will stand up and fight for the weak? The system has failed our veterans and active duty members. The system has failed our families. But most importantly, they have failed our children. Now, I like to take a step back here for a moment, because after all the speakers that we've had, we've heard a lot of negative stuff that's happened to them. But I want to bring some joy and some good news before I bring up Nancy Schaefer. Now, I'm not here seeking a pity party or for anyone to feel sorry for me. That's not what this is about. But I believe this is the best way to paint the path for what is about to come. My battle began in 2010 and ended in 2022. After the last court proceeding, I was so distraught, as once again I was hoping for the best outcome to only have the worst happen. I didn't know what to do. In the back of my mind, I contemplated on just giving up and just wanted to hide from the world. The constant rejection over the 12 years was eating at me. It was affecting my livelihood, my social life, relationships, and my career. All I could think of was why. I had to make a decision whether or not to continue fighting and hope that one day, that my kids will seek me out. But before I could make that decision, there was one thing I had to do first. I had to ask my parents the hardest question that any child would have to ask their parents. But I called them with tears in my eyes, asking if they would be mad at me if I would stop fighting for their grandchildren in court. This is not to say that I would stop fighting for them altogether, because I'm standing right here today, side by side with my fellow advocates, fighting for change. But the very words that were spoken by my father are ever embedded in the back of my mind, and those words were, "I never thought you would get to this day." I don't know what it was, but something unexplainable happened. Shortly after the discussion with my parents, I remember being at work on top of a ladder, putting some things away on the top shelf, when my boss said, "Brian, look down." My boss will be the first person to tell you that I was like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, as I didn't climb down that ladder, I slid down that ladder, and that I had grasped my daughter with open arms. Her mother graciously, as they were walking in the mall, stopped in to have our daughter see me. That was the first time in 12 years that had happened. I was so stunned with emotions. After they left, I couldn't help but bawl my eyes out with tears of joy. Shortly thereafter, I was contacted by my kid's mother, who was seeking to communicate about changing how things were. I didn't know what to think or feel, especially after 12 years. But what did I have to lose? And that brings me here to today. For many of you who have known me over the years in the movement, you've only seen me talk about my children and seen pictures that I've posted whenever I had visits with them, and how much I just missed them dearly. But today, you get to meet them in person. It is with great privilege in asking my son Matthew, my daughter Sophia, and their mother Marta to join me on stage. I never thought that we would be where we are today. Just over 3 years ago, Marta and I were pinned against each other, at each other's throats, and couldn't come to any form of agreement. Instead of helping us as it was intended to, the courts hindered the ability of co-parenting to be possible. The judges, attorneys, caseworkers, and guardian ad litems were all puppets masters, pulling all the strings to keep us fighting against each other. Yes, Marta and I have our own faults regarding the matter. But to change how things were, we both needed to grow up and get out of the court's grasp. We needed to cut the puppet master's strings. With their strings cut, wounds healed, and bitter words spattered between, with bitter words spattered between parties amended, we can say we have overcome the odds. When Marta has situations arriving with our kids, she calls me. Especially when the kids don't want to listen to her. Typical teenage behavior, right? But for example, when she was trying to get our daughter to clean her room, but Sophia was giving her a hard time over it, Marta called me, asking me to speak to our daughter. So I called Sophie and, had a firm father-daughter conversation. And what did she do? She cleaned her room with no further argument. The next day, I get a call from Marta stating, "Do you know what our daughter just said to me?" And of course I didn't, but I knew you were going to tell me. She goes, "She just said to me, 'Why did you have to go and rat me out to Dad?'" I could not help but laugh. But what a moment that was. When Matthew was having problems with keeping his grades up, Marta and I, had a conversation over the phone about what to do. We discussed it in great lengths to what the possible outcome could be and, what we needed to do. And with me on the phone, as I was, a state away, both Marta and I had a long conversation with him. We informed him that his game privileges were being taken away until he got his grades up. He made that promise to his mother and I, and that he would bring them up. He actually kept that promise. And because of that, and he's done exceptionally well over the last year, he has earned his privileges back and will be getting a brand new computer very soon. This is what co-parenting is about. When our kids are sick, she calls me. When school functions come up, she calls me. Even when I had my e-bike accident back in last June, she, along with the kids, would call me on a daily basis to check in on me. This is how it should have been from day one. Now, I want to give them a chance if they would wish to say something. No? I'm good. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. As for the movement, our case has become a success story. We are no longer fighting against each other within the courts. And the relationship we both have with our children is at the highest level than it has ever been. Although we may not always see eye to eye, we have 100% moved forward in the best interest of our kids. It brings this special moment of joy to those who are seeking and are in their darkest hours. To bring encouragement and smiles to all of you, to show unity. To those who believe there is no end in sight, it doesn't last forever. Co-parenting can be accomplished, and without the involvement of the court system. In order for this to happen, both parents must cut the strings of the puppet masters and set their differences aside, stop fighting with each other, and put their kids first. Thank you. All right, you guys can get done. Okay, so the next topic I'm going to be talking about is Nancy Schaefer, this lady that's literally on this banner beside me. Ever since I began my own personal battle in 2010, I have served my community by bringing awareness to the unjust laws and corruption in the family court system. Just like many here today, I began researching anywhere and everywhere I could to find answers to what, when, where, why, and how this was happening to me, and if I was alone. During my research, I found many disturbing articles and videos related to family law and CPS. Much of what I found led me to learn of former Georgia Senator Nancy S. Schaefer. After watching videos and reading every article I could find, I began to see how in-depth the corruption really goes. Nancy was the only known representative of her time to speak out against this system, and she was highly dedicated to helping all she could. After speaking with many families in her own investigation, she wrote a scathing report on her findings. This report was called The Corrupt Business of Child Protective Services. At the Eagle Forum of Georgia in 2009, of which was recorded, Nancy read directly from her report. And at this time, we will play that video so you can hear it directly from her words 12 years later.
Well, my name is Nancy Schaefer, and I'm from the state of Georgia in the United States. And thank you for your gracious invitation to join you tonight. And thanks to all of you who have made this incredible World Congress of Families number 5 in Amsterdam possible. It's a privilege for me to join you tonight and to be with you in some pro-family policy here. I will share with you on the unlimited power of Child Protective Services. I served in the Georgia State Senate, and after 4 years of viewing the ruthless and unsparing actions of Child Protective Services, also called CPS, which I will use tonight, I wrote a scathing report entitled The Corrupt Business of Child Protective Services. Thank you. The report cost me my Senate seat. Here's some copies of the report, if you'd like to get one. However, there are causes worth losing over. And this is one. I'm going to talk about some of the problems and then some realistic, maybe, solutions for families and children, and maybe look to some steps that we can take. This is not to say that there are not those children in wretched situations who need to be removed. There are, and we all agree. But tonight, I'm talking about those children removed from their homes intentionally for profit. Children are seized unnecessarily from their families due to the federal aid created in 1974 entitled the Adoption and Safe Families Act. It offers financial incentives to the states that increase adoption numbers. To receive the adoption incentives or bonuses, local CPS must have more children. They must have more merchandise to sell. Funding is available when a child is placed in a foster home with strangers or placed in a mental health facility and medicated, usually against the parents' wishes. Parents are victimized by the system that makes a profit for holding children longer and bonuses for not returning children to their parents. This is abuse of power. It is lack of accountability. And it is a growing criminal political phenomenon spreading around the globe. Oftentimes, but not always, poor parents are targeted to lose their children because they do not have the wherewithal to hire an attorney or fight the system. Being poor and lacking proper housing does not mean your children should be removed. CPS has redefined poor to mean psychologically inferior. Therefore, it is in the best interest of the child to be removed. Best interest, of course, has also been redefined at the child's expense. It has been reported over and over that 6 times as many children die in foster care than in the general public. Once a child is legally kidnapped and placed in official safety, the child is far more likely to suffer abuse, including sexual molestation and or rape. Case workers and social workers are often guilty of fraud. They withhold and destroy evidence, and they seek wrongly to terminate parental rights while being protected by state immunity. There is a huge bureaucracy made up of judges, court-appointed attorneys, guardian ad litems, social workers, state employees, court investigators, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, foster parents, adoptive parents, and on, who are looking to the children in state care for their job security. Judges have control over private living arrangements and income of 48.3 million Americans. The United States Census Bureau reported in 2002 that $40 billion in transfer payments were made between households of custody parents and other parents. That money, $40 billion, is under the direction and control of family court judges in environments covered with confidentiality laws that protect the wrong people. Fathers are victims of this unjust system. Child support payments, even without having visits with their children, are choking the very life out of fathers. 3 fathers, of whom I am aware and have been in touch with, committed suicide in the last 12 months because they lost the opportunity to even visit with their children. These are crimes against humanity for financial gain. Rights are removed from parents, human rights, civil rights, and even religious rights. One illustration of what took place in my district is that after so many calls, I decided to call a meeting in one of the counties of my own district. I personally called 37 families that had been in touch with me who had all lost their children, grandchildren. I had them meet me in the library one Saturday morning. We started at 9 o'clock and we ended at 9 o'clock. We had 50 families standing outside the door that could not get in. We didn't have time to talk with them. There was incredible anguish and profound suffering from these families. Some children had been taken off the school bus, taken out of the hospitals, or taken out of their homes in the middle of the night, and even worse. It was just an incredible ordeal. These parents, trapped in the system, become like refugees. They're dazed and glazed and have no one of whom to turn. They do not know what to do, and the loss of their children is devastating. After having worked in this arena for several years, I do not believe that a single child comes out whole after having been in this system. Many foster children make up the homeless population of today. I introduced legislation, Senate Bill 415, in my last session. A substitute bill was written at the last minute by the chairman of the Judicial Committee. All the strong points of my bill had been compromised. I was told, accept it, Senator. At least you will get some legislation passed. And I answered with, obviously, you do not know me. I did not come to the Capitol to get legislation passed. I came to make a difference. What can be done? An independent audit should be called on every state of all Child Protective Services departments. I am in touch with congressmen and state officials, and the door may be possibly opening very slowly. A federal congressional hearing is needed. But let me add, due to the hundreds upon hundreds of cases that I've been called to consider, I placed calls to state senators, representatives in their respective states across the country, asking them to help me with certain families. And I was told, if I help that family, or if I help you, I will lose my job. Remove, abolish the federal and state financial incentives, and those are taxpayer dollars. Those dollars have turned CPS into a business that takes children and separates families for money. Open family court. Remove the confidentiality laws. Give parents their rights verbally and in writing. I even feel that to terminate the rights of parents, the case should be heard before a jury. Family rights and parents' rights must be protected. We do not need more influence like the UN's Convention on the Rights of the Child. It's anti-parent, anti-child, and anti-common sense for the family. There has to be perseverance for any great reform, and great reform is needed in this area. As Charles Spurgeon put it, how do you tame a lion that is well fed? First, he must be brought down. Second, his stomach must be lowered. How do you tame Child Protective Services? It may be only by closing it completely and starting over at the beginning with pro-family values. In closing, let me remind you that there is case law from state appellate and federal district courts and up to the United States Supreme Court, all of which affirm the constitutionality of the rights of parents to actually be parents to their children. There's biblical law too. It goes like this: speak up for those who can't speak for themselves, and for the rights of all who are destitute. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy. Thank you.
It is unfortunate that on March 26, 2010, Nancy and her husband Bruce were found dead in their Georgia home by their youngest daughter. The investigators ruled it to be a murder-homicide, stating that Bruce shot Nancy and then turned the gun on himself. What could have been the motives for Bruce to commit such an act? It was reported that the family was having hardships, that the Schaefers were losing their home to foreclosure, yet they had just put their home up for sale as they were downsizing. Why were they downsizing? Well, their children were grown and off raising their own families, so they didn't need all that space anymore. Yeah, isn't that what most parents do when their children, leave the home? Downsize? Yeah, absolutely. It was a known fact that Bruce adored his grandchildren and would do anything for them. Also in the investigation, it was reported that Bruce had cancer. The investigators believed that this could have been a possible motive, but not very likely. During the autopsy, it was reported that the caliber fragment that was recovered was not the same caliber that Bruce actually owned. It was reported that Bruce had shot Nancy in the back and then turned the gun on himself and shot himself in the chest. Now, I'm no expert, but if somebody's going to try to commit suicide with a gun, they're not going to point it at their chest. They're going to point it at their head. It was also a known fact that Nancy was working on a book that was never published because of her death. It's also a known fact that she was working with others to create a documentary based on her findings and the stories that she heard and witnessed. There are too many inconsistencies within the investigative report, leading many to believe that Nancy and her husband were murdered because of her activism against the system. Although I never got to meet Nancy in person, I, along with many in the movement, admire her work. We strive to keep her legacy alive by taking up the mantle as we continue seeking change. Since her passing, there have been many more like her who have stepped up to the plate, serving their community, and have paid the ultimate price, defending the rights of the people.
So, is this the one that's on? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So, yeah, our advocates have been working hard while some of us have been over here. Others have been over at Congress talking to legislators. We've had meetings. We've had meetings in the mornings, and there's still more meetings going on tomorrow. So Connie Reguli, the founder of Family Forward Project, is going to speak to us now. She is an amazing advocate. There's nobody that works harder for families and has sacrificed. She's not had to sacrifice her life, but she has had to spend some time in jail fighting because of her advocacy. So Connie Reguli, come on. My hero.
Oh, thank you.
Love this lady.
Thank you. And again, thank you to everybody and those of you. I know we have several live streams going right now, and I've tried to keep feeding them into Family Forward Project. All who are watching, we have worked so hard this week. And, I've worked so long with so many in this group. I'm so glad to see some of you coming back, Carlos, James, Brian. Again, we haven't seen for a while. We've had some very interesting responses and some very incredible responses. I'm going to tell you, we have kicked the dirt until we have finally drummed some stuff up. We just had a great meeting with Congressman Burgess Owens, a lot of promising results there. Got to meet with him directly while we were in Mark Mesmer's office this morning. He came out and we took pictures with him. And if I get close, if I get this close to anybody, they hear my spiel, my elevator spiel. So we were able to talk to him. So, some of the people we called on again and we're getting that message. We are getting that message. There is still much to be done. But, I listen to Nancy Schaefer, and those are the same words I say all the time. It's the same words. And I know this isn't like, it doesn't make you feel, may not make you feel hopeful, but words are the only thing that's going to change it. Okay, speaking your truth. And, some who are new here, who've never been here before, just know many have come before you and paved the way for you to be the stars of this change. We feel your pain. We will never lose our compassion for it. We're going to continue. I'm actually staying here another week to follow up with a lot of the people that we've met, and then also look at, trying to get some other meetings with other areas other than Congress. So it's only through our perseverance and our continuing, just continuing to never, ever, ever stop. So, and I hear so much stories about court, and, I'm a recovering attorney now. So, but, I'm just going to tell you, I get it. I worked it. I was in it. I saw what happened day after day after day. It is an altered universe. Okay. It is absolutely an altered universe. Well, and, I was listening to Brian talk. It's like, what you thought was real is not real. And, the courts, they put it on a piece of paper. They write something on a piece of paper, and they act like it's the truth, and it's not the truth. And so, it is not the facts, it's not the truth. And so, we have to continue to confront that. I've done so many appeals over and over and over. And, here's the problem we have. Even the Court of Appeals, even the appellate process looks at a court order. And if you can't rewrite the truth at the appellate level, you're going to lose again. And there's so many tricks they use in the courtroom. They say you're not credible, and then you can't overcome that. So, it is truly an altered universe, and that's another area we have to work on. I will say, as I've told many of these meetings, the American Bar Association finally created a parent representation group back in 2017 that's had biannual meetings. They now have an NTPR initiative through the American Bar Association, which is quite outstanding. That has been spearheaded by Dr. Vivek Sakaran. He's actually an attorney at the University of Michigan. So there is slowly change. It is pushing an elephant off a cliff, guys. It is pushing an elephant off a cliff. And, I sometimes use the Titanic, and I say we may not be able to stop the Titanic, but if we can shift it 3 degrees, we might be able to avert the next disaster. So, y'all, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry I haven't had as much time to totally speak to everybody the way I would like to. But listen, if I'm not here, I have been over there. So I've not been loafing, anybody. I want you to know I have not been loafing. If you don't see me here, like, where's Connie? She's snoozing. No, I've been pounding over there. Rachel's marking our steps. I think we walked 4.7 miles yesterday. And trying to get around from place to place. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here, and God bless everybody.
Thank you, Connie Regoli. Thank you for everything. We would not be here without you. So I have the honor of introducing one of my favorite friends and coworkers and driven individuals that I work with at home in Connecticut. She doesn't even know I'm talking about her right now because she's on the sidewalk talking with people walking by. Maureen has a tireless voice for our families. She understands the plight. She understands the fight. And she's in it to win it. Maureen O'Neill Davis from Connecticut.
So I just want to say quickly that this has been an amazing year being here. This event, having so many people, new faces come in. Advocacy is not easy and it's not quick. We really have to bring all of our voices and all of our stories together, because when we talk to lawmakers as an advocate alone, they hear part of the story. They hear a much wider, more colorful, more intense story when all of you are able to come and be part of those conversations. And it's hard, right? A lot of us probably sat at home and saw that Family Forward Project brings people to Washington, and we were hesitant. You were hesitant. But once you get here, once you feel the power of being here in Washington, talking to other folks that have walked a similar path and learning strategies to be effective as an advocate, it's a whole new ball game. I know for me, and you heard a little about my story a couple days ago, I felt victimized by the system. I felt when they took our kinship adopted daughter to put her with another family, that I was being victimized. I was being portrayed as neglectful, abusive for trying to get her needs met. I did not realize that there was going to be a powerful rebirth, if you will, in advocacy. I didn't know that I was going to come to this work like this, just like many of you. You certainly didn't see your path over the next years of your life coming to Washington and be part of this voice. But this movement is making change. We are making change in terms of the Family First Act. We are making change in terms of strengthening Title IV-B funding for preservation and reunification of families. And we are going to continue to make impressive, prominent change in the child welfare system. Connie was up here a few moments ago. She's been here for years. We've been here for years, a decade now. And it's really interesting when we think about Nancy Schaefer and, 15 years ago now, her saying the same things about the child welfare system that we are saying here today. It's all still happening. Hopefully we're putting a bit of a spotlight on aspects that we and our voice can help change that system. And we did have some pretty good meetings today. And I am optimistic. I'd like to finish my time up here by saying, come back. Tell other people that you meet about the wonderful people you met here and the way we are working to change systems, one lawmaker, one conversation, one of your stories at a time. It's all important. It's all valuable. And together we can make these changes. We can change the funding model. We can change the mantras. We can change the number of children who come into foster care. We can reduce that, and we can help parents to feel supported and not lose their children in the process, but rather create a family well-being system rather than a parent policing system. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next time.
As another Family Forward Project event is near its end, on behalf of the entire family rights movement, we'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for being here and joining together to address these great atrocities. A message from Stephen Ball of Washington State, a fellow activist and dear friend to many in this movement. It is fitting that we take a moment of silence to honor the countless who have departed this earth from natural causes, suicide, or other forms while fighting this fight. These are our fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends. Please join me in a moment of silence. Paula Marie Jackson.
Ted Bush.
Ira Scott. Ira Scott.
Ryan S. Kelly.
Anya Day.
Chad Reed.
Jonathan Lancaster.
Chris Hallett.
Christy Ashley.
Angela Borths.
Grace and Christopher Vega.
Leon R. Koziol.
Michael Shane Davison.
Janice Matthews.
Gabriella Boyd.
Grayson Martin Kessler.
Haley C. King.
Cheryl and Lindsay Nagel.
Garland Lucas II.
Jillian Lucas.
Tony Meek.
Brenda Secord.
Angelica Hoffer.
Christopher Brown.
Catherine McVeigh.
April Michelle Berman.
Holly Dykes.
Harry Slaughter.
Haley Gascoigne.
Kendra Newman.
Stephen C. Thatch.
Kyra Franchetti.
Thomas Valva.
Nicole Jane.
Mark Ruan.
Former Senator Linda Collins Smith.
Former Senator Nancy Schaefer and Bruce Schaefer.
John Mast.
And Aaron Rigsby.
Let us pray. Father, together we stand here as a multitude of your people. We come from every background, religion, race, and discipline. Almighty Great Spirit, we seek guidance, compassion, justice, and relief. We recognize all from every corner and can respect these basic fundamentals of life. We cannot ask those who have crossed over to continue this battle. However, we can ask for the reflection. We can ask Almighty Spirit to let through us their voices be heard. Let our unity be their mountaintop as you grant them eternal comforts. Grant us the strength to pick up their banners, flags, trumpets, and drums. Let us continue to march in their stead to parental equality and fairness, not only with Americans' legal system, but also to everywhere there is such injustice. Let each warrior here be renowned, and let each warrior of tomorrow be tempered to fight for the children's future justly, and under that banner of purity and righteousness. Almighty King, we ask to repair the hearts of your innocent ones. Send your heavenly helpers to whisper to them that they are loved and they are never alone. Let us remember, we march for them and for their futures. Thank you for the opportunity to pray with this audience. Let us each continue in the faith and in camaraderie. Amen. Thank you again to the Family Forward Project for allowing me to speak, sharing words of wisdom and encouragement. Thank you for the honoring of conducting the RIP ceremony. May everyone be safe in their travels home. Change is coming. Keep your heads held high. There is still much work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
I remember the day of your birth, the happiest day for me on this earth. You have my heart, you're my child, you're my first, born to me as a gift in this world. My love for you will never end, you should know that. The love is here, kept for you, I'll always show that. You'll forever have a place with me. Don't let anybody try to nurture hate for me. I never thought it would end like this. I never planned just to call it quits. We can plan, but God plans better. Sometimes it's best when people aren't together. I tried to make it work for you. I never wanted it to hurt you too. Sometimes that's just how life goes. But you should always know that I will always show. You're my heart, you're my mind, you're my soul. You have my love, never stops, always grows. Find the truth, avoid the lies. God knows you were born to me as a test in this world. My love for you will never end, you should know that. The love is here, kept for you, I'll always show that. You'll forever have a place with me. Don't let anybody try to nurture hate for me. You were gonna be a daddy's girl. You were always such a happy girl. Frustrated by daddy's constant kisses. I'm glad you're too young to know what you'll be missing. I'll always be there for you. Baba's gonna be here for you. I know your Lord loves you too. Don't let anything get between him and you. Chin up, stay strong, stay firm. Make me proud, success in both worlds. Have faith, dream big, go pray. We just never lie and fear the last day. This world is a test for you. I'll always want the best for you. I only wish to see you grow. But you should always know that I will always show. You're my heart, you're my mind, you're my soul. You have my love, never stops, always grows. Find the truth, avoid the lies. God knows you were born to me as a gift in this world. My love for you will never end, you should know that. The love is here, kept for you, I'll always show that. You'll forever have a place with me. Don't let anybody try to nurture hate for me. You need to know that I tried my best, and through you, God's given me the hardest test. God's tests are for those that he loves, and I know justice will come from above. You were being kept away from me, clinging on, literally pulled away from me. To hurt me, they hurt you too, and now all you can do is look for the truth. There's a lot of bad dads in this world, not me. I'll always be there for my girl. I write to you to show you that I care, and I'll keep the letters safe no matter how many years. Please, never take sides with this. It's a system of Iblis behind all of this. They encourage fighting and lies, aiming to destroy and sever family ties. But those who side with evil never truly win. God is our protector through thick and thin. God knows my intentions are pure. He knows I did my duties as a husband and more. He knows I kept you both safe and secure. Women will forget, but God's keeping score. It's sad, but that's just how this life goes. But you should always know that I will always show. You're my heart, you're my mind, you're my soul. You have my love, never stops, always grows. Find the truth, avoid the lies. God knows you were born to me as a test in this world. My love for you will never end, you should know that. The love is here, kept for you, I'll always show that. You'll forever have a place with me. Don't let anybody try to nurture hate for me. I pray that while we're kept apart, that God will plant me deep in your heart. I'm your father to the end from the start, and I know you'll see the truth. I know he made you smart. You have to come back to me. Your place is with me naturally. I only wish to see you grow, and when we reunite, you see our love flow.